One of the most important skills for any Hokage to learn was delegating. Despite being one of the strongest ninjas in the village, he didn't really have the time to do missions himself unless the situation was truly drastic. That said, sometimes the situation was so sensitive and the need for secrecy so high that Danzo trusted literally nobody else to go deal with it. So he had one of his subordinates pretend to be him, adjust the schedule so the deception was less likely to be discovered, and then he headed out of the village, alone, to do what he needed to do. And what was so damn important? Nothing but simply to receive a report from one of his ninja. That was it. Danzo knew the general location where he had to be, but that was all. The agent was supposed to find him. He hated being in a position of weakness, and a part of him yearned to go find the agent before he himself was found. But he fought down the urge. As good of a ninja as he was, he knew this agent was simply better than him. So he simply sat down on a tree trunk and closed his eyes and waited. I admit, I didn't expect anyone to show up, let alone you of all people. I expected this to be a simple dead drop. Some things are too important to be written in a report, and I thought it was high time to check in with one of Konoha's most important operatives. Danzo opened his eyes. It is good to see you again, Itachi. Itachi ignored the courteous greeting. Let us not waste time. Precautions were taken, but the chance always exists that we are spotted together, and that would be disastrous. Indeed, so tell me all you can about the Akatsuki. And so Itachi did exactly that. Before that point, Danzo had only known that they were after the Jinchuriki, and that Orochimaru had once been a member. Itachi told him quite a bit more, including the identities of all its current members, and what he knew of their abilities. Danzo recognized the name of Konan from his dealings with Hanzo the Salamander, and another group who had also called themselves Akatsuki. He had suspected a connection, but this confirmed it, and now he had a pretty good idea of who this Pain really was. Though according to Itachi, there was an even bigger threat. So the memory of the fourth Hokage that Uzumaki interacted with spoke the truth, and this masked man truly is the real threat. Yes, though dismissing Pain as a threat would be a mistake, Itachi said. Is there any way you could set the leadership of the Akatsuki against each other? I can't imagine this Pain is happy simply being a fake leader. Maybe, but I doubt I'll get the opportunity. Nobody but Konan or the masked man ever talks to Pain alone, which makes any kind of manipulation of that sort difficult. Any attempt on my part to get closer to Pain will no doubt be met with suspicion. Besides, that kind of coercion isn't my strong suit. Kyojutsu to force the issue? Danzo suggested. Pain carries the Jujutsu of legend, so I doubt that would work. And even if it did, the masked man would see through it and undo my work. So what do you suggest then? Danzo asked. You know the threat this organization poses better than anyone. I believe fighting them directly would be a mistake. I'm continuing to look for opportunities to assassinate the masked man, but I admit that it's unlikely to succeed. I also previously attempted to abduct with the intent to kill Naruto Uzumaki, in order to keep the Kyuubi out of the enemy's hands. I still believe eliminating the Jinchuriki before the Akatsuki can collect them to be a good strategy. If you want to kill the other villages Jinchuriki, be my guest, though that only kicks the problem further down the road. But not Uzumaki. Konoha will never surrender the Kyuubi. As we speak, Lord Jirai is preparing our Jinchuriki for the battles ahead, and with the information you have provided, she can be even more prepared to fend off attacks. For the first time, Itachi showed genuine displeasure. Even with that knowledge, unless she has full mastery of the Kyuubi, I doubt the girl's chances. And if it is discovered that the Akatsuki have a leak, I will be immediately suspect. I will make it so that Jiraiya's agents discover this intel piece by piece, and make it seem like we discovered this information on our own. But you are right, it is risky. If you feel it becomes too dangerous for you, return to Konoha immediately. Danzo would certainly do his best to do exactly as he had said. Having a loyal leaf ninja within the Akatsuki's ranks was incredibly valuable. But if it failed, and Itachi was discovered as a double agent, that would be fine too, so long as Itachi managed to escape with his life and return to Konoha. If that happened, then Danzo would finally be able to reveal the truth surrounding Itachi and the Uchiha massacre. He'd love nothing better. It galled him to no end that the Uchiha clan as a whole were remembered as victims, and not as the traitors they were. Danzo would also be totally okay with Itachi's name being cleared and again serve as an official Konoha ninja. If that happened, Danzo might even nominate Itachi as his successor in case anything happened to him. In many ways, Danzo considered Itachi the ideal of what a leaf ninja should be. Powerful and willing to even slaughter his own family if it advanced the interests of the whole village. Tread carefully, Lord Hokage. If the Akatsuki wanted to destroy Konoha, it could. Right now, the Masked Man and I have an agreement that so long as I serve faithfully, no direct actions against the Leaf will be taken. We will tread carefully, but we will not cower in front of this terrorist organization, and we will not surrender the Kyuubi. So what's our timetable? They will start to collect the Jinchuriki in a little over 30 months, and my deal with the Masked Man will expire not long after that. Expire? What do you... And realization struck him. You intend to go through with this insane plot of yours? This was the only thing that held Itachi back from being an ideal shinobi in Danzo's eyes. Itachi didn't acknowledge that rebuke and gave a small smile. It seems Sasuke still has many bonds inside of the village. Which means that even after you're gone, he'll still enjoy some protection, Danzo thought. So long as your brother returns to the fold willingly, he will be allowed to return to Konoha. Despite his rather questionable personality, he is looking to become a competent shinobi, and we could certainly use such an asset. Though I would still rather choose you over your brother. It should be noted that Danzo didn't know of Itachi's illness and that he only had so much time remaining anyway. I have made my choices, Itachi said, and without so much as a by your leave, he vanished. Today was the first scheduled lesson Danzo had planned with Uzumaki. He was just finishing up with some paperwork before meeting her. Everything was coming along nicely. The Sand Village wasn't a problem anymore. After their failed invasion and accompanying losses, they were in no position to argue any terms and had offered their surrender. Of course, Danzo couldn't just annex or destroy the Sand Village completely. The other nations wouldn't stand for it, and the appearance of decency and fairness had to be maintained. So instead, Danzo had simply demanded some mild reparations, which sounded completely reasonable to any outsider looking in. After all, the reparations that were being demanded didn't come even close to repairing all the damage that had been done, so Danzo could even claim to be merciful here. Of course, as mild as it looked, Danzo knew the Sand Village couldn't pay even this much. They were poverty-ridden, and their economy was in shambles. Their poverty and lack of future prospects were, after all, the whole reason the Sand Village agreed to the joint Sound Sand invasion in the first place. Now, having to partially pay for the damages they'd inflicted, their situation would only grow worse. They had even admitted that they didn't have the means to host the next Chunin exams. A massive loss of face on their part. All of this made it even more likely that the people of Wind Country would come to the Leaf formations instead of the Sand. It was a vicious cycle. And if the Sand decided to attack them again, then Danzo could claim to be the victim and point towards the Sand as the aggressors again. But that was just one problem taken care of. Fire Country and Konoha had the misfortune of being between everything and everything else. Fire Country was forests and fertile fields with few natural defenses, so they were threatened from all sides. Water Country and the Mist Village might or might not be a problem right now. They had just come out of a civil war and had their hands full with internal affairs. Beyond that, they had lost much of their powerful bloodlines during the purges. Danzo had only come into power very shortly before the civil war ended, so his chances to take advantage of the chaos were minimal. Still, he had sent out agents to offer sanctuary to any bloodline-wielding clans or individuals. A ninja village could never have enough powerful Kiki Genkai-wielding bloodlines. The Mist Village might complain, but it was hard to blame the Leaf simply for offering protection from the chaos. It was still a bit of a risk, since their new Mizukage, Zabuzamamochi, was by all reports a hothead and glutton for bloodshed. So he might just be willing to roll the dice and declare war anyway over this affront. But Danzo was confident they could be beaten back in that case. And again, the Leaf would be able to claim to be the victim and hold the moral high ground. That might even be the optimal scenario, since Danzo had no doubt that the Leaf would have to fight all of the great villages at one point or another. So now, when the Mist Village was still weak, would be ideal. So long as the Leaf Village could claim to not be the aggressor, he'd be fine with starting up that front. The real problems, though, were the stone and the cloud. The stone still held a grudge after what the 4th Hokage did to them in the last war, and the cloud was probably the current strongest of all the villages militarily, which automatically made them the most dangerous. So the best Danzo could do here was launch a bunch of false flag operations, pitting those two against each other. It was delicate work that Danzo could only entrust to his best and most trusted operatives, who all had seals placed on their tongues to prevent them from ever divulging what they had done, even if captured. As for internal matters, Danzo had sent agents to the Fire Daimyo's court, looking for opportunities and leverage. The hope was to eventually find an excuse to do away with the position of daimyo altogether. Really, that the most important post in the land was still based on hereditary succession based on birth instead of merit was something that was just silly to him. After finishing up some paperwork, organizing all the stuff just mentioned, Danzo headed out to meet up with Uzumaki for her first lesson. He had chosen one of Root's old underground bases as a locale, since secrecy was still important. Jiraiya was, of course, accompanying Naruto. "I take it you intend to observe?" Danzo asked. "You're even dumber than I thought if you believe I'll let you alone with her," Jiraiya said. "You are, of course, welcome. Maybe you'll even have something useful to add," Danzo said before turning his attention to Naruto. "I confess to some curiosity as to your progress. Mind telling me what you've been up to?" Uzumaki grinned with childlike enthusiasm and made a slashing motion in the air. A few yards away, a deep scratch appeared in the wall. The Rasengan is supposed to be the highest form of shape transformation, and while I haven't been able to add nature transformation to it, I've discovered some interesting applications in the trying. Wind-based jutsus without the use of hand signs. "Impressive," Danzo said, and he meant it. Even he couldn't do that, and he had been working on his jutsus for far longer than she had been alive. "Have you considered learning a second element?" "Yes, but I feel like my time is better spent pushing what I can do with one element." "Then you are being more like the second Hokage instead of the third." Hiruzen was a master of all 5 elements. Tobirama, on the other hand, never learned anything except water, and instead tried to push what he could achieve with that one element farther than anyone considered possible. For whatever it's worth, I approve. I may even be able to help you here. Have you ever heard of vacuum manipulation? Can't say that I have. Not surprising, considering I invented it. It's a technique I developed in order to overcome a wind user's natural weakness to fire release. If you master this, you'll find that your ninjutsu will no longer serve to simply strengthen a fire-using opponent. Useful, considering that Uchihas are mainly fire-aligned, and 2 of the Akatsuki's most powerful are Uchiha, Danzo said, referring to Itachi and the Masked Man. That does sound useful, Naruto said. Indeed it does, Jiraiya said, and he looked to Danzo with surprise and forced out the words, "Thank you for doing this." To strengthen our ninja strengthens the leaf, and strengthening the leaf is simply my duty. A man needs no thanks for doing his duty. But before that, I'd like to give Uzumaki a small test to see how far she's come as a ninja. No problem. Jiraiya says I'm easily at a high tuning level already. It's true, she's her father's daughter. Easily the best of her generation, Jiraiya bragged. Oh, I don't doubt that. But there is more to being a ninja than simple power. Come with me and you'll see, Danzo said. Danzo led them deeper into the underground complex until they arrived at a large room, illuminated only by candles. Danzo raised his voice. Bring him in! A door opened and a bound man was pushed inside by an ambu. He was on the smaller side, somewhat rotund, and didn't have the physique of a ninja. Remove his gag and blindfold, Danzo ordered, and it was done. This, Uzumaki, will be your test. I want you to kill this man using that new technique you just showed me. Naruto just stood stunned. Jiraiya cursed. Should have known. Come Naruto, we're leaving. You think she'll be able to go through life without ever taking one? No need to rush it, Jiraiya said, moving to leave. But he stopped when Naruto wasn't immediately following. I've killed before, Naruto said softly. You have? Jiraiya asked. This was news to him. Twice, yeah. During our last mission, I killed 2 of the Sound Ninja, alongside Sai and Sasuke, the one who could merge bodies and the leader. Naruto turned to Danzo. Look, I'm not that naive. I know a ninja is expected to kill, but there's a difference between taking someone down in battle and this. She waved at the helpless man. Why do you think this is different? Danzo asked. He can't defend himself. Ah, tell me, Uzumaki, do you think most of the ninjas you will face in the future will be able to defend themselves from you? I'm not talking about the Akatsuki, but I'm talking normal enemy ninja. They are trained for that, so yes. They are trained, yes, but you're looking to become part of the very best and most powerful ninjas in the world. How much chance do you think your regular Chunin will have to defend himself from you once you reach Lord Tsuruya's level and beyond? Naruto didn't answer. I think you'll find that most enemy ninja will have as much chance to defend themselves from you as this civilian right here. Naruto couldn't come up with a good counter-argument for that. Still, she wasn't just going to go along with this. I'm still not going to kill an innocent person just to prove a point. Innocent? Danzo said before turning to the prisoner. Would you care to introduce yourself? All that matters is that I'm a very rich man. I'll reward you handsomely if you can get me out of here, kind lady, he said, obviously terrified. This man is Gato, founder of the Gato Company, Danzo said. Did you ever learn what happened to Kakashi's Team 7 during their first real mission? Gato had all but enslaved the people of Wave. He exploited them to the point where many died of starvation. Those who spoke up against him were killed publicly to counter rest. This man is responsible for more death than most veteran shinobi, with far less noble goals. After he was thwarted by Team 7, he returned to Fire Country. Bitter over his loss, he tried to dissuade his fellow merchants and businessmen from doing business with Konoha. Naturally, I couldn't let this stand. He needed to die, but instead of simply ordering an assassination, I decided to bring him here, to test your merit as a kunoichi. Naruto didn't know what to say to that. A large part of her had hoped that this man was innocent. Since then she'd have a good excuse to not kill him. You don't need to go through with this, Jiraiya said. You have a kind heart. That's nothing to be ashamed of. Tell me, Lord Jiraiya, would Minato have hesitated to kill this man? Don't you dare bring Minato into this, Jiraiya growled, and for a moment Naruto thought he might attack the Hokage. Why not? We should all learn from the fourth's example. He was half the reason we won the First Great Ninja War. He forged a short peace for the Leaf Village by painting the land red with the blood of Stone Ninja. In one battle, he personally slew 1,000 enemies. Try to imagine it. 1,000 lives. That's not an insignificant percentage of the Stone Village's entire shinobi population. Minato was a good man. He hated killing, but he did what he had to. He didn't enjoy it, Jiraiya said. I couldn't care less whether he enjoyed it or hated it. That is completely irrelevant. All that matters is that he did his duty. Danzo turned back to Naruto. And to emphasize my earlier point, do you think those Stone Ninja had any hope of resisting him? No! They were like children before him. But your father knew that if he didn't kill them, they would go on to fight other Leaf Ninja. Leaf Ninja who weren't the legend that your father was, and would risk dying in battle. So he killed them, and in so doing won us the war. He did his duty, and now it's your turn. Danzo put a hand on Naruto's shoulder. Be the next Minato Namikaze. Make him proud. Naruto, you don't need to do this, Jiraiya said. Naruto's face had turned pale by this point. Is it true? Your father was a good man, Jiraiya repeated. I never claimed he wasn't, Danzo mumbled softly. But would he have killed this man? Naruto motioned towards Gato. Jiraiya didn't answer. For a moment, Naruto looked like she might vomit. Then she managed to steady herself, and looked to Gato, her face devoid of all emotion, as she began to move forward. Gato backed away from her until his back was against the wall, and then he threw away all of his pride, prostrated himself and started to beg for his life. Naruto halted and turned back to Danzo and Jiraiya. Mercy isn't a weakness. You don't need to do this, Jiraiya pleaded. How many times did this man hear and spit on others asking for mercy, I wonder, Danzo said. And now he begs for his life? Think, Uzumaki. Is this world better served by only killing the monsters that are brave and sparing the cowards? Gato continued to plead, seeing that he's harmless at this point and no threat to anybody. And for a short time, his was the only voice in the room. Then Naruto screamed and slashed her arms, and then a wave of yellow chakra followed her motion. And like a blade of air, it impacted Gato's stomach. He collapsed and lay dying in a pool of his own blood. Naruto wobbled unsteadily on her feet. It's over, she said. You need to work on your aim, child. His stomach isn't a vital area. If we leave him like this, it will take him several long, painful hours to die. Jiraiya tossed a kunai at Gato's head, but it was intercepted in midair by Danzo's own thrown kunai. She did as you asked, you evil bastard! Enough of this pointless cruelty! And that time, Danzo was actually legitimately offended and glared back at Jiraiya. I assure you, Lord Jiraiya, that my cruelty is never pointless. Naruto turned back to Gato, and she showed more terror of this dying man than she had of any other opponent she faced thus far. She screamed and ran forward. She towered over Gato and clawed at the air over and over, and the air rippled as tiny blades of wind chakra flew towards Gato, and turned him into a bloodied mess. Naruto continued until nobody could mistake Gato as anything but a mangled corpse. When it was over, Naruto stood still as a statue, looking completely catatonic and covered from head to toe in blood. Jiraiya hurried over and scooped the girl up in his arms. We're going home, he said. Not that they actually had a home, since they spent most of their time just traveling, but it was the principle of the matter. A couple of rude Anbu members blocked his path. Jiraiya looked at Danzo. You think you can stop me? I'm not trying to, Danzo said and spoke softly. Uzumaki. The girl turned her head to look at him. Her face was so pale you could have mistaken her for a corpse. Next time, you and I will discuss vacuum manipulation and nothing else. I promise you. Danzo nodded towards his agents, and Jiraiya and Naruto were allowed to pass without any further issue. Tsunade had claimed that becoming a medical ninja would require such a time commitment that Sakura wouldn't have time for anything else. And even when Sakura showed she could absorb the material faster than expected, Tsunade refused to diversify. This was a problem, since Sakura didn't want to become just a medical ninja, or at least not an ordinary one. An ordinary medical ninja was told to hang back from combat. The closest they came was learning to dodge in and out of the fray to evacuate wounded allies and hide. It was all part of the second clause. No medical ninja shall ever stand on the front lines. A rule that Tsunade herself strongly believed in. This was the entire reason why Sakura had shied away from this path when she became a genin, and explored the illusionary arts instead. Sakura wanted to stand alongside Naruto, not just patch her up after every battle. At the start of her training, Sakura had hoped that the fourth clause would give her an out. Fourth clause, only those medical ninjas who had mastered their ninja art Creation Rebirth Strength of 100 techniques were allowed to ignore the other clauses. Tsunade obviously knew this technique and could teach it. Turns out, not fast enough. It was the pinnacle of medical ninjutsu for a reason. Beyond that, the technique would require her to store a large amount of chakra into a seal on her forehead. Tsunade had already applied that seal, for she claimed Sakura's chakra control was already good enough to start storing energy. They'd made sure it wasn't visible to a normal eye, since a weapon was far more effective if the enemy didn't know you had it. The point was that it would take many years before the seal stored enough energy to be used to its full potential. And until then it would require a near constant feed of chakra. This reduced the amount of chakra Sakura had to work with in any potential fight until then, and Sakura wasn't exactly a chakra monster to begin with. This, Tsunade told her, was yet another reason why she wanted Sakura to stay out of fights until then. Thing was though, that if Naruto were to get into a big fight before then, and she needed help, then Sakura doubted she could just stand aside. And Tsunade, so far, was refusing to teach Sakura anything that could help her in that event. I don't want to encourage your suicidal behavior, girl. If you're going to step into a battlefield with metaphorical giants before you are ready, you will die. Teaching you something like my super strength would only make it more likely that you'll make the wrong choice. I'll be making the wrong choice regardless. Because you are stupid, and don't realize just how much nothing you would accomplish. Less than nothing, since you'll get killed and so ruin your dear Naruto's mental state. Tsunade poked Sakura's chest. You are not strong enough. You don't have that special spark of genius that would allow a child to stand among S-class ninjas with only a few years of training. You're just normal. The only way around that is by cheating, hence the Byakugo seal. My job is to drill enough wisdom into you so you live long enough to use it. Sakura swallowed her insecurities that told her that Tsunade was absolutely right. She wasn't like Naruto or Sasuke, who had so much natural talent that they were all but predestined for greatness. Sakura had slowly come to accept that over the years, but she'd also decided that was no reason to give up. I can see you're unconvinced, Tsunade said. As expected. How about a little wager then? If you can survive in a spar against me for 30 seconds or land one hit, I'll teach you as you wish. So long as you don't succeed, and you can take this test as many times as you want, you listen to me and promise to stay out of fights. You're forcing me to spar against you, a Sannin, without even teaching me anything! Sakura nearly shouted. That wasn't true, she knew. Tsunade had already taught and done plenty for her, not the least of which was give her the Byakugo seal, but just nothing that was immediately useful in this instance. You've got the basics. No amount of special training on my part will help if you've got the speed and reflexes of a preschooler. And there isn't any special shortcut training to improve those. It takes diligent effort over a span of years. Or natural talent, Sakura adds in her head. Years that I don't have, Sakura said through clenched teeth. Can I at least use my genjutsu skills? You may do whatever you wish, save choose and prepare the battlefield. You usually won't get that luxury in the real world either. And so it began. Sakura's regular challenges to Tsunade to prove she had what it took to survive among giants. Tsunade was skilled enough to always leave Sakura whole enough so that it wouldn't interfere with the rest of her training, but otherwise didn't spare her any pain. Though Tsunade didn't use genjutsu herself, her chakra control was such that she always seemed to know when Sakura tried it on her, and so it had all but no effect. For months this continued, and Sakura had trouble not getting into a defeatist's mindset. She had to keep entering these tests with the expectation that she could win them, otherwise she'd have lost before she'd even begun. Not a few times, Sakura had asked to be alone after her defeats, when she felt she couldn't hold back her tears. With every defeat, she felt like she was failing Naruto, and breaking her promise to aid her in the troubles ahead. That she just wasn't good enough, and never could be, regardless of how hard she tried. That it was all pointless. And so the months dragged on, until one day, in a fit of desperation-fueled madness or genius, Sakura tried something crazy. She had to rely on her strengths, for willpower alone couldn't overcome her weaknesses. Sakura's only strengths, for now, were her genjutsu abilities and her brain. Tsunade was so far above her that attempting to use genjutsu on her was pointless, especially since Tsunade knew to look out for it. Genjutsu was the ninja art that gave a user control over the mind. Tsunade's mind had proven to be unassailable. So where did it leave Sakura? Well, there was one mind that she might still be able to influence. Her own. When Sakura next engaged Tsunade, she forced a genjutsu on herself to speed up her own thought processes. To Sakura, it suddenly seemed like Tsunade was moving in slow motion, and Sakura felt like she could almost predict Tsunade's next move. Whatever she was doing, it was also giving Sakura the worst headache she had ever experienced, but she worked through the pain. It still wasn't enough. Sakura's own body felt sluggish, a body unable to keep up with her enhanced mind. It always came down to that. Sakura was just too weak and too slow. She often fought back to Team 10's true Genin tests. 3 shogi pieces, placed on an obstacle course. The pawn, the knight and the king. Placed in order of difficulty of experienced academy students to experienced Genin to aspiring Chunin. At that time, Sakura only ever had a chance of getting the one meant for experienced academy students. The pawn. And even that had left her exhausted and puffing for breath near the end. By itself, that was nothing to be ashamed of. Sakura had only just graduated from the academy. It was normal to be at that level. Not weak, just normal. Average. But when you measured yourself against the best of your generation, natural-born geniuses, being normal might as well be the same as being an invalid. She had no Kikigenkai, no special genetic clan advantages, just normal. At times it was hard not to see that normal as a personal failing on her part. Angry at herself, Sakura used genjutsu on her own brain again. The brain controlled the whole body, and so Sakura commanded her own body to be faster, to be stronger, no matter what the cost. Tsunade's eyes widened as Sakura suddenly sped up. Not nearly enough to truly match the Sannin, but it was an unexpected increase all the same. And so Tsunade made a mistake. When you engage someone in taijutsu, you judge your opponent's speed and adjust your parries accordingly. A true master of taijutsu could play around with that. They could deliberately undersell what they were capable of, so that your opponent misjudges your speed when they try to parry. Sakura was no master of taijutsu by any means, and trying to undersell her physical abilities when she was already so outmatched would have been an exercise in stupidity. Regardless, her current stunt had the same effect. Tsunade misjudged Sakura's movement due to the unexpected change, and so parried too slowly, and was sent flying by Sakura's haymaker punch. Tsunade was fine, of course, and did a backflip with one hand as she skidded over the ground before landing on her feet. Sakura started laughing madly, despite her entire body screaming with pain, and blackness gathering at the edge of her vision. "I did it! Sakura trailed off, her headache becoming so strong she started to wobble on her feet. She quickly undid all her self-hypnosis genjutsu, but the migraines didn't go away. Sakura rubbed her face and saw blood clinging to her hand from a nosebleed. And next she also realized she could taste blood in her mouth. Darkness closed in around her, and Sakura started to fall to the ground. The last thing she was aware of was Tsunade's terrified voice calling for Shizune. When Sakura next woke up, she was indoors. This was odd since the last fight with Tsunade had been done while traveling, far from any villages. "I think she's coming too!" Shizune called out. Tsunade hurried into the room and immediately began fussing over Sakura, diagnosing her. Sakura could see bags under the Sannin's eyes. "Do you know your name?" Tsunade asked. "Sakura Haruno?" she answered, confused. "Do you know our names?" Tsunade asked, and Sakura named them. Several more mundane questions followed. Sakura's confusion mounted, but she didn't ask to clarify. You didn't argue with your medic, you just cooperated and asked questions later. "It seems you're alright," Tsunade eventually said. "Where are we?" Tsunade gave the name of a village that was supposed to be several days walking away from where they had been. "How long was I out?" "About a week." Sakura had been knocked unconscious before, but never for such a long time. Then, Sakura recalled what happened before she blacked out, and couldn't help but smile. "I did it, didn't I? I passed the test!" Tsunade gaped at her for several moments, until she schooled her features and gave her a thin, joyless smile. "Yes, but your training will have to wait. First we need to take a detour back to Konoha." "Why?" "Because I need to go find Might Guy and kill him. The 8 gates! For you?" Sakura noticed that Tsunade was nearly trembling with rage. "Of all the dangerous, irresponsible, and moronic things!" Tsunade was so angry she had trouble speaking. Even Shizune, normally so calm, was nodding with a scowl. "He's gone too far this time," she said. "Excuse me, but... what? What did he do? And what are the 8 gates?" This startled both older women in the room. Tsunade studied her for a long time. You don't even know what you did, do you? "I used self-hypnosis to force my body to go beyond its normal limitations," Sakura admitted. "Details," Tsunade commanded. "Tell me everything. What technique did you use, what did you try to accomplish, and how did it feel?" Sakura answered all questions as best as she could. "You are insane," Tsunade said eventually. "Perhaps," Sakura admitted, smiling. "But how would a sane person ever be able to land a hit on you?" "They shouldn't. You shouldn't. All of this was about making you realize your limitations. That willpower alone can't overcome some barriers." Tsunade suddenly looked tired. "It was about keeping you safe." Sakura didn't know how to respond to that. Eventually, Tsunade started to explain. The 8 gates limit and regulate a person's chakra flow. Ordinarily, individuals can use no more than 20% of their body's full potential. It's necessary for our bodies to tear themselves apart through overexertion otherwise. The first gate removes a body's natural checks and forces 100% performance. Later gates are... well, they are more extreme in nature, with greater rewards and greater costs, to the ultimate point of death. It is supposed to be the pinnacle of taijutsu. I know of only a few who have mastered their bodies to such an extent, and only one that can go beyond the first gate. Naix will remind you that Lee didn't showcase his gates during the Chunin exams, and very few people know he can do that. "I am no taijutsu master," Sakura said. "No, you're not. You cheated." Tsunade poked Sakura's head. "Of the 8 gates, 2, the first 2 are located in the brain. It's those 2 that you forced open through your stunt, and nearly killed yourself in doing so. If you didn't undo your technique before losing conscience, you would have died. I don't think you appreciate just how close to death you came. There's a reason we don't use untested jutsus in battle. You should have come to me first." "It was a spur-of-the-moment idea, and if I told you, you would have been prepared, and it wouldn't have worked." Tsunade looked like she had to hold herself back from screaming. "You're just determined to kill yourself, aren't you?" "I didn't want to do this, but you left me no choice," Sakura said. "Will you honor your promise and help me now?" "I don't want to," Tsunade said. "But yes, I will help you kill yourself, Sakura." And she stormed out of the room. After some moments of tense silence, Shizune, who had been mostly silent, said, "Our lady has really grown to love you. I'm almost jealous." "I don't mean to hurt her," Sakura said. She knew all of Tsunade's obstinacy was based on concern for her. But Tsunade had to realize she couldn't shield Sakura from this. "I know. Just promise her, and me, that you'll stick to the codes of the medical ninja when you can. Nothing's changed. You didn't suddenly become a taijutsu master by shortcutting your way into a forbidden jutsu. At most, you'll briefly be able to surprise someone with it, and it's certainly no substitute for normally training your body. I know. This was never about that. I just wanted to prove that I'm not as helpless as Tsunade thinks. Fighting to protect your friend is one thing, but don't go picking a fight for the sake of pride. And Tsunade doesn't think you're helpless. She just hates the idea of you fighting such dangerous enemies. You know what she's lost. Please don't make her lose more." In the coming days, Tsunade did help Sakura with her new discovery. The first thing she did was arrange for her to be taught the Shadow Clone Jutsu. Sakura couldn't make more than a few clones without exhausting herself, but it served her purpose. That purpose being practicing her self-hypnosis without permanently getting brain damage. Sakura's new trick of self-hypnosis was as powerful as it was dangerous. Arguably even more dangerous than the gates. The brain was a delicate instrument, and messing with it like she did wasn't without risk. The reason she'd been out for so long wasn't just because of the gate, it was from the damage to her brain. Hence Tsunade's questions when she'd woken up. She'd been checking for memory loss. Tsunade hypothesized that the reason nobody had ever done what Sakura had done was that all who attempted it died after the first try. The only reason Sakura wasn't dead or in a permanent coma after her first attempt was that the world's best medical expert had been immediately available. But over time, Sakura did start to learn how to do it relatively safely without giving herself a aneurysm. And once mastered, it didn't have the many drawbacks that the gates did. Using it, Sakura was able to analyze situations more quickly and heighten her reflexes. Useful, even if her body couldn't quite keep up yet. Tsunade remarked that Sakura's new ability was almost identical to the Sharingan's precognition, albeit without being able to see chakra and copy jutsus. She, Sakura, had somehow found her way to an ability that mimicked one of the most powerful bloodlines in the world, and in a way that didn't require any special genes. As for the gates, this new method that she had discovered would never allow her to progress past the second gate. The other gates weren't located in the brain and couldn't simply be accessed from there. Once Tsunade calmed down enough, she remarked how appropriate it was that her student would never be able to use anything beyond the second gate, which was named the Gate of Healing. Beyond that, it was clear that the risks of using those two gates would be even greater for Sakura than for a normal taijutsu user. Since Sakura could only open them through the use of genjutsu, that meant that they could also only be closed through the use of genjutsu. But this in turn meant that even the first two gates had the potential to be lethal if she didn't manually turn them off fast enough. Sakura's self-hypnosis allowed her to keep using her body until she had literally no energy left and dropped dead. It was an advantage, but one that had to be handled with extreme caution. And once Sakura started to learn Tsunade's chakra-enhanced strength, she was actually starting to get quite dangerous at close range. Though Tsunade did everything in her power to try and dissuade Sakura from that notion through many spars. Still, one day, after Sakura had managed to destroy her first boulder by punching it, Tsunade said, "I need to apologize to you, Sakura." "What for?" "For something that I said before. You, Sakura, are far, far from normal." And that's the end of part 30. Nikes out.